Nostalgia can be dangerous. This is a 2005 to 2009 Mustang GT. This one is a 2007, but let's not kid ourselves, it was all the same car. The S197 chassis with the 4.6 3-valve engine nowadays gets kind of a bad rep, but I had amazing memories in my own 2006 Mustang GT, and then I graduated onto the mighty Coyote engine. So my question is how good does the S197 hold up with every suspension mod available compared to a modern Mustang? And should we look at this Mustang in a good light or something that has aged terribly? Let's go for a drive and find out. Talk about a throwback today. We are in a 05 to 09 Mustang GT with the much not loved 3-valve 4.6 engine. Now, I have done a supercharged 4.6 liter 3-valve. First gear. Second gear does not exist. I've done a turbocharged or Hellion turbocharged 4.6 liter 3-valve. Woo! Oh man. And those cars were very fun. The turbo one in particular made 550 wheel. And in the early 2010s, that was very fast. Now, we are in a bone stock 3-valve motor with all suspension. This is all white line suspension, and we have BC Racing coilovers, and with the white line suspension, we have sway bars, we have all the goodies, bushings. The anti-dive, what that does is keep the car from the notorious nosedive these cars do that really unsettles the car and really hinders the performance of handling. The 05 Mustang was absolutely revered when it came out. However, it has really shown its age in the interior. In fact, I could argue that the interior has aged in a way to where it kind of makes the 99 to 04 be a little more forgivable, because you're like, okay, this is like the old Ford, it's all hard plastic, whatever. This is all hard plastic everywhere you look. It does not matter. Yeah, except the steering wheel. Steering wheel has some leather on it. I had an 06 Mustang. It was an absolute factory freak. I talk about it all the time because it makes absolutely no sense. Mine ran 13.4 at a little bit over 100 mile an hour at the quarter mile.
Close at 9:30. Also, hot rod grill. 13.4, same thing.
But also, their body roll was pretty hard to control if you didn't know what you were doing, especially in an autocross with tight corners. On a big back road with sweepers, it was a little bit more manageable. Now, another thing too is this is a 5-speed transmission. I actually learned how to drive stick in a 3-valve 05 to 09 Mustang as well. And actually, I learned how to drive stick in one of the same parking lots that Von Gittin Jr. learned how to drift at Cloverleaf Mall. It was an abandoned mall up in Virginia. But nowadays, they're kind of looked down upon, because if you do a supercharger kit on one of these, you're pretty much at a factory Coyote 5.0's power level to the wheels, and you're risking the longevity of the engine. I said yes to this review, even though I've done a lot of 3-valves, because I've never driven one that was made to handle. And I've never driven one that kept the factory engine and factory everything else, just suspension and tires. My gut feeling is that it's going to be very similar to a like 2013-14 Boss 302. This is interesting because it does not feel like a normal 3-valve whatsoever. Typically when you get on it, you yaw. Typically when you brake, you yaw. Typically when you corner, you body roll. It was made more as a cruiser, not so much as a race car, it seemed like. At least that's what it feels like the philosophy was. You know, now that I think of it, maybe I thought my 3-valve was so much faster because it didn't have suspension upgrades, and the whole thing felt like it was gonna pop a wheelie even with 300 wheel horsepower. Speed-wise, the 3-valve felt very much like, say, a 350Z. The 350Z and the 3-valve were very close cars when it came to speed. And, you know, some of the materials have really worn out. These are notorious for peeling back and just better off just ripping them or getting new door cards. They just gave up. It kept flapping. They glued it again, didn't work. They ripped it again. Also, this has this Shaker 500 system, which is so good that the interior starts shaking to pieces. I had the black interior, and I don't know how to feel about this tan one, to be honest with you, because it's like tan, silver, then black. If it was tan, then black, that'd be a little more forgiving. But I don't know, it's kind of weird with the brushed aluminum thingamajigger. We also have a Muffler Delete, which I'm actually surprised is not louder than it is. So the owner of this car went to an autocross when it was bone stock, basically. It said, "This is not it, Chief." Driving a 3-valve with BC coilovers feels like a contradiction. Oh yeah, here we go. Memories, all alone in the moonlight. I just remember going from the 3-valve to the Coyote Mustang and how big of a change it was. But I will say though, if you want like a budget drift car or a budget circuit race car, you can pick these up for under 10 grand, which is absolutely insane. This is the premium interior too. It had the heated seats, the heated leather seats. Along with that, they also have the retro interior. They really tried to make it feel like the old Mustangs. And this started the entire retro wave of making the cars look more and more like the golden days of muscle cars. Now let's talk about reliability. The 3-valve has been notorious for being inconsistent for reliability. Mine never had a problem. The only problem it had was an alternator. And I know never had a problem and alternator don't really add up, but if something were to go wrong, I'd want it to be an alternator. But everything else, the motor itself was always fine. I never blew one up. And I'm actually surprised because I beat the ever-loving snot out of my 3-valve. I launched it a million times. I went to the track. I circuit raced. I did everything you can imagine. And it was a convertible, so it was even heavier as a pig. And the gearing in the 3-valve is so long, and that's actually what made it a fun car to drag race in, because you only had to shift basically twice. First gear to second into third, and you would cross the line in a quarter mile in third if you had the factory gearing. Whoa! Traction control kicked in and dead hooked. We are in factory brakes as well, so I do have to be careful, but when it comes to entering and exiting corners, I just gotta scrub my speed and engine brake a little bit. This clutch is pretty beefy. I forgot how heavy the clutch is in this car. I just wanted to just revisit the 3-valve and try and compare it to my cars now. And this to the S550 is like night and day. Still didn't make it. And the 3-valve only revved to like mid 6,000 RPM. It is nothing like today. With a Coyote with some bolt-ons, you can tune them as an S550. You can get them basically to 8,000 RPM. This was kind of the last hoorah of the 4.6 engine. They sold it as this completely revolutionary new engine that made 300 something horsepower. And then only a few years later, in 2010, they put the same motor in the new body style. And that year I called the bastard child. The poor people who missed out on the Coyote in 2010, who bought a brand new Mustang and said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" You might as well have one of these. They weren't much nicer. Could you make power out of these? Sure, but it was a much bigger headache to get power out of these than say a new Coyote motor, even a first-gen Coyote engine. It's a great like first V8 car. I've always expressed that with these cars. I've always thought that you still get the sound of a V8. It doesn't have enough power to hurt yourself. It's rear-wheel drive, so you can get used to what rear-wheel drive is like. That's the kind of stuff I really like about it. But you also have OEM engine reliability. If you leave it stock, you can go rip up in the mountains with a good suspension setup and tire and have just as much fun as a lot of different cars. The problem is, it just doesn't feel like the R&D was there with suspension on these things. And when I turn into this car, I don't have the 3-valve body dip. That's kind of scary. Okay, yeah, brakes, I desire a little bit more from the brakes. That's the only thing. Everything else turns in nice. And if you notice, my steering input is not a lot. Like, look, watch this. Hard corner, barely anything. Pretty quick steering ratio with all these parts. Because I remember I used to have to work mine pretty good. I thought I was fast as a teenager. You know, just beating the snot out of my 3-valve, thinking I was fast. But this is much, much better of a setup than mine ever was. I'm nostalgic of this car. I'm not blind to its flaws. Since the gearing is so long, it's very linear and very predictable. You can stay in 3rd or 4th almost the whole time, so you're not staying in the upper rev range and beating the crap out of it. You can stay in the lower rev range and it still has the torque to make it happen. If you listen, it's not an annoying, raspy exhaust. I really thought this thing was gonna drone, hurt my ears, make me feel old and think it's annoying. But this is a really good power band for learning how a rear-wheel drive car works. A Miata is really good for it too, but if you really want that extra torque and that extra momentum faster, the 3-valve suspension, I am actually surprised. I thought I was gonna really hate on this thing today. Not hate per se, but not be impressed, I guess. So, 3-valve, it's a budget Mustang now. You can buy one of these for pretty cheap, have a decent, okay power plant. It's not a Coyote whatsoever. Just don't expect that. Coyote is a much better engine. You still have torque, you still have some power, you can make it work. Now that the Crown Vics are increasing in price, if you want a budget American V8 race car, this might be a great option for you. Do you think these cars are way too outdated looks and interior wise? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the bell, because it really helps me out in this day and age. Along with that, if you'd also like to help this channel, head over to PattersonCarCare.com. It's my own personal original detail brand that has all original formulas made right here in the US of A. And on that note, I upload on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays. And I'll see you guys next time, and take it easy. RIP my voice. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye. Big announcement. Super proud to announce my first ever merch collection over at ThatDudeinBlue.com with designs I'm super proud of. So for my first ever collection, make sure to head over to ThatDudeinBlue.com and consider supporting the channel. And thanks so much for the support.